All right, Kori, thanks for coming on. Let's get straight into it. Let's start with what is conscious, not crazy?
It's about being conscious, living consciously so you don't feel crazy. But conscious, not crazy came to be, now it's been, my kids are 14 and 16. They were 2 and 4 when it started, or the beginning of the journey of conscious, not crazy. Because when you have kids, as you know, there's no owner's manual. There's no instructions on what to do with them. And as excited as I was to become a mom, I felt like I was really missing some tools and I felt crazy. I would say I'm a very patient person, and I did not feel patient. I felt like I was out of control when dealing with my kids because I have a very strong-willed, my oldest, which you know, Max, is super strong-willed, which are all the things that will make him great as an adult, but they're difficult to parent. And so we found a school. I was venting to another mom about my struggles with my kids and managing the behavior. And I just felt like what we're doing is not working. And so she introduced me to a school that had a different approach. And it started with what was called conscious discipline, which is a parenting philosophy. And as I researched that, and then over a 10-year period, basically researched all kinds of things, books, they were business books on personal development. Long story short, a couple years into me learning all of this, I ended up working at the school because I have a background in education and really getting to try these things on with my own kids at home and in the school. And I just saw how amazing it was and how much it ended the power struggles, and I was no longer giving my power away to my child or thinking I could force change behavior. And I felt much more conscious and present in the moment. So I started a parenting class, and the parenting class has gone on for about 10 years. And then a little over a year ago, I launched a podcast because I thought, wow, more people could benefit from this information. And it's no longer... it's kind of started, like the roots of it started in that conscious discipline approach, but then I've just incorporated all the other knowledge I've acquired, just from life and business experience, as well as experience in education and experience as a parent. And I really don't like to call it a parenting philosophy, more or less just understanding human behavior and emotional intelligence. So
I'm really excited about this conversation because that's what we do here.
Yeah.
Is really help kids choose, that's the key word there, choose the right behavior, the correct behavior, the better behavior. So with conscious, not crazy, so the traditional method of parenting or what you were doing could be summed up how? So
I would say as parents, we're often thinking, so we get upset, we become reactive. So our child does something like, my daughter calls me a name in front of the checkout lady at Target. This is a real story. And it's disrespectful, but she's 2 or she's 3 at the time. And oftentimes parents get reactive or mad because they're worried, not as much even about managing the behavior. They're worried about the perception of how they're being perceived as a parent.
Yep.
And so you really have to let go of caring about what other people think. Of course we care about what people think, right? I care about at this point in my life what people think those people I care about. If I don't have a relationship, I don't have a relationship with the checkout person at Target, So if she's going to judge me, that's okay. I'm okay with that if I'm doing what's right for my child and I'm doing what's right for me. So yeah. So I think traditional discipline is trying to force or thinking this idea of it's actually shame-based and it's fear-based behavior management. And although I know I was raised more in that type of environment, yes, it might get the immediate change behavior, but the child is not intrinsically motivated. It's an external thing, and that's not truly sustainable. And just to your point, we want our kids to be intrinsically motivated when they're adults or when they're teenagers or when they're in college to make the right choice when we're not there. And if we don't set them up in those early years to have that thought process and to understand why they need to make that choice, which takes more time and energy. So that's the other thing. Parents are tired. Parents are working. Parents are overwhelmed. The activities are crazy now that our kids are involved in. It's just a lot. And so I think there's this piece of the fear and the shame base is quick. It's immediate. It works in some cases. In some cases, it doesn't. It wasn't working for us. When you have a strong-willed kid, that does not always work.
Yes.
So I'd say fear and shame were the root of it.
What would you say the main objective of the job of a parent is?
I want to raise a whole child. So it's not about what people think of us as parents. It's raising a good human, somebody that has strong values, a strong foundation, their values are rooted in a strong foundation. And again, that can be intrinsically motivated to make the right choice. One of the other things traditional discipline tends to do is parents are telling, like, you didn't listen to me. I told you not to do that. So we're basically calling our kids stupid. And when you're telling your kid or judging the behavior, shaming, same thing, it's not motivating change behavior. It's no different in the workplace with your employees. If you approach them attacking them, all it does is it puts them in fight or flight. Their defenses go up. Whereas when we need to start asking questions. Because when you ask a person a question, it takes them out of the emotional part of their brain back to those prefrontal lobes where they have to think and problem solve. So it's just the science of the brain. And it also takes their defenses down and they're having to solve it and think about it. So when my kids make a mistake or they're upset about something, I immediately go to questions. Well, so tell me more about that. Well, I wonder, why do you think that person did, behave that way? Or why do you think you're feeling this way? Or why do you think you made that choice? Because now they have to reflect on the choices they make, and there's an accountability. They have to own it.
So let's dive a little deeper into what's the difference between intrinsic and what's the opposite? External?
Yeah.
Yeah, intrinsic motivation, external motivation.
So I also have a passion for changing education, because I think in our traditional educational settings, we're not teaching kids we're not teaching kids how to think and problem solve. We're just shoving information down their throats. We're teaching them what to think. And so they're getting out into the real world with the lack of problem solving skills. We're also teaching them, because of extrinsic motivators, to be pleasers, to do things we'll basically say it's like the carrot on the stick.
Yes.
You go into classrooms and they have stars on charts. So you have maybe one kid with 10 stars and one with 2. Well, the one with 2 just continues to feel bad about themselves. And it's in front of everyone, advertised to the class, and it creates these dynamics that don't motivate change behavior because it's this external sticker. So, and it's not sustainable, and that's not how the real world works. And now we have kids. I hear business owners say repeatedly that people want more, kids expect more for less. They want to put in less effort, less time. They want to get it done as easy as possible, as quick as possible. And they lack grit. They lack resourcefulness and problem-solving skills. They're focused on problems, not solutions. And when a problem arises, if they don't have the exact, there's no creative thought in solving that problem.
Yes. I don't know what else to say to that other than 100% yes. I would say, going back to what is the objective of a parent, in my opinion, it's to train and raise that child so they do not need you whatsoever.
Yeah. No,
fully independent from the parent. So as soon as possible, if we can make that happen, then I'm successful as a parent. But when you have a child who grows up and they still need mom and dad for even the basic necessities in life, such as doing laundry. I remember kids in college, they'd go back every weekend to have their laundry cleaned. What are you talking about to me right now? You're 18 years old.
Right.
What are you doing? I mean, it's not that difficult. I learned when I was I think it was in 6th grade or something.
100%. And yes, that's I love that explanation of it, because parents They're not doing it. I don't judge parents out there that are doing the things that are doing a disservice to their child. They don't know any different. And in my opinion, it stems from this. I call it the pendulum theory. So we were raised over here, and this generation of children should be seen and not heard. Do as I say. Don't cry. Don't be mad. Don't be sad. Don't feel your feelings. So those adults with all this suppressed emotion and undealt with feelings, it's uncomfortable to deal with those later on. And you don't even maybe understand it or aren't aware of it. And we're living unconsciously and just raising our kids, maybe trying to manage the behavior the way our parents managed us. But we don't want them to feel the pain we felt. And I don't mean like abuse necessarily, but maybe it's a little bit of emotional abuse or whatever. But we don't want our kids to feel any pain, and that is doing kids a disservice. Because when we learn the most in life is when things are hard, things are difficult, and we feel a little pain. And that's what tells us, like if my daughter says something hurtful about a friend, because, 14-year-old girls do that. That's normal. And she's got to hurt someone's feelings and be isolated or not invited to something. So she understands the consequence of her choice, the consequence of her behavior. And I see parents stepping in and texting me, the mom, saying, well, your daughter said this or did this, and that's not okay. And they don't always like my response, because I'm like, I'm going to support my child in this. And one of the questions I asked my daughter, because no, I don't want her to be unkind, but she's not perfect. She's human. She's learning. She doesn't have all the skills and tools. This is how you get them. And I asked my daughter, I'll ask her, so tell me about this. What's going on? Again, more questions. And I'll say, okay, let me ask you this, because I hear you saying you're not being hurtful. If someone was treating you in the same way you're treating them right now, how would you feel? Like I want to teach them empathy. So she can but I don't want to solve it for her. I need her to work through that. So to your point, she doesn't need me. Now, can she still call me as an adult for moral support? Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. But yes, we want our kids to be self-sufficient. And so many kids today are not.
Right. And when I say that the job of the parent is to help them, guide them, train them to become fully independent from the parent. That doesn't mean you go old school style like I was raised, which is no love. Yeah. I think I heard my father say I love you maybe once.
So common.
Hugged maybe twice ever. Nothing against him. It's just how he was raised. So it's like this cycle that continues on. I'm not saying that. And the reason why, it's not because I'm all about the lovey-dovey stuff. It's about what is most effective. Right. Effectiveness is what I'm always most interested in. And if you want to raise a child, you want to coach an employee, you want to teach a student for the long term, you have to build the relationship and the connection. Because then when they are wanting to make the right decision, a lot of it when they're growing up, when they're younger, has to be revolving around either like not disappointing you. And then once they become an adult, now that transfers to themselves, holding yourself accountable. I don't want to do this thing, or I don't want to fail here because I don't want to disappoint myself. Because I have an accountability inside of me now, and so not from the outside.
100%. 100%. Yeah. And again, parents aren't intentionally doing this. They're just not aware. So that is my passion with what I do, because I was like, wow, I had this all wrong. When, unfortunately, my kids were young, but I'm also getting to see the benefits of doing this with them for a long time. My kids I have the connection with them. They tell me a lot, like, and they're teenagers now. And I ask them and have hard conversations with them. And I'm not shoving information down, forcing information on them. I'm really just, sometimes when they're chatterboxes, I get real quiet and listen.
I need to learn that.
And it's a struggle for me too, but especially with
chatterboxes.
Because my youngest, Harper, she's more introverted, so she doesn't talk as much. So when she starts talking, I get quiet because I want to hear what's going on. And I love that, but I'm able to have some interesting conversations with them. And, you've got to have the connection, because as there's more autonomy as they get older, they're on their own more. And we can't live in fear. It's hard. Yeah, when your kid starts driving, and you could sit and focus on that, but you can't put them in bubble wrap. They're going to go out in the world, and you just have to trust. You want them to have the skills and tools that you can trust they're going to make good choices. And I tell them that. I'm like, make good choices. I say that to them all the time. So
does this mean that you are best friends with your kid?
No. You know what? Okay, here's a funny story.
Because that's common.
Yes.
My best friend's my daughter.
We're not meant to.
What?
I don't even care. Here's another thing I see, especially with girl moms. They take their kids' behavior personal, because they're like, I do everything for you, and this is how you treat me. It's like, oh, you can't take it personal. And in life, you just can't take other people's behavior personal. Other people, including your children's behavior, does not say anything about you. It's not about you. It's just about them. It's where they're at in life. And we need to accept the moment as it is, and with our kids, support it, because they're still learning and growing. Their brains aren't fully developed. They lack some impulse control still, in the teenage years, even through the early 20s now. And so, no, it was funny, because my daughter was telling me a story yesterday, and she made a comment. She said, well, her parents just let her do whatever she wants. That's why she struggles so much. They never tell her no. And I looked at her and kind of smiled. I said, so you're telling me it's good that I tell you no? And she looked at me and smiled. She goes, well, and she knew. She's like, yes, she can see that, and is not meaning to tell me that and affirm that, but she did. And so I jokingly looked at her. I said, so telling you no is a good thing? And she goes, well, telling me no isn't really a good thing, but I'm just saying people need to hear no sometimes. So it was funny. It was like it was a great moment to connect with her, and it was funny, and it was a great thing as a parent to hear, okay, good. She gets it. She gets it on a higher level.
And what you did there was you asked the question, which is the foundation of how we teach here.
Yeah.
Ask, don't tell. That is like in lesson number 1 for all of our new instructors. Ask, don't tell. Because the natural human response, especially with teaching kids, because they're kids, just tell them what to do. They don't know. Mm-hmm. They're not smart enough. So you just tell them every tiny little thing to do. But in reality, they're much smarter than we realize.
So smart.
And asking, like you said, is going to trigger, or it's going to require their brain to become active. Mm-hmm. If it's not active, then how do you expect them to give their best effort? There's no way. They're never going to give their best effort for somebody else. They're going to give their best effort for themselves for when it starts from the inside. So that's one of the things we always do, is help our instructors ask more than tell. Now, there are going to be times where, if they're running out in the street, go, should you be doing that?
Right. No, life or death situations are different. There are times when it's like a major safety thing, obviously. Yeah. 100%. You're not going to let them do something too physically, especially at a very young age.
And this really reminds me of the book. I think you read it too, The Whole Brain Child. I think that was called.
I don't know actually if I have read that one.
The whole premise of it is you're going down this river, mm-hmm. and you want to keep the child in the middle, right? Yeah. You don't want to go hitting on the bank on the left or hitting on the bank on the right, but pulling them always back to the middle. But life will pull them left and right. But the job of the parent is to keep them in the center.
And the other thing I think parents do unknowingly is we put our kids in a box. We tell them, or we reinforce, like, I have an introvert and an extrovert, but I've always been very careful with my language with that.
Yes.
Like, I'm like, I don't want to label her, because then she's just going to become exactly what I tell her.
Fixed mindset.
Yes. Mm-hmm. She's going to become that. And so my kids roll their eyes at me constantly, because they'll say, well, if we're talking about a choice they made, they're like, well, so-and-so did this. And I said, who's in charge of you?
Right.
Who's in charge? No one else controls you, and you don't control anyone else. And that's just in society as a whole. We do. We think we have control of other people. We let other people control our own emotions and feelings, and we should not. Our emotions and feelings are real, and I love this analogy. They should be indicators, not dictators. So they're just an indicator, like a check engine light in your car. Okay, I'm feeling this feeling. Why am I feeling that feeling? Owning it, understanding it, and deciding what to do with it in a more productive way as opposed to reacting or yelling. Now, am I going to be perfect at any of this? No. I'm going to react sometimes and not be proud of it, but I'm also going to be like, okay, I didn't handle that well. I'm going to do better next time. I'm going to work to be better because language matters. So the 4 things I really think that I focus on is 1, the mindset.
Yep.
So your mindset matters. And then what we focus on, our attention matters. And those 2 things combined are going to directly impact our action or inaction. Mm-hmm. So our actions matter. Mm-hmm. And also our communication, our words matter. So what we think and what we focus on is going to directly impact what we do and how we communicate.
I want to go back to what you said earlier with potentially why parents will quickly react to unwanted behavior of their child, and it goes back to their own identity.
Yeah.
Right? So it's, I don't want to look bad in front of whoever is around, which I'm in full agreement with this concept. And really, it's a principle in life that I think everybody should follow. And that's called stop caring what other people think. Especially, let's just start with the top, strangers. You're never going to see them again. The odds of seeing a stranger again is so high. So why waste so much time and energy into caring about what they think in that moment, maybe 10 seconds? And trust me, been there with a boy who's on the autism spectrum, throwing tantrums, fits, running around the grocery store, hitting people. I mean, of course, I don't want him doing that. And I always apologize, tremendously. I feel bad for that.
Right.
But him kind of, acting out, I have to constantly remind myself that it doesn't matter what they think.
Right.
It matters what this boy needs right now and to help him level up in his development.
The book, The Anxious Generation, I love because it talks about how we used to raise kids in communities.
Yeah.
And we've really lost that. I just went to Ireland with my son and his rugby team, and it's so much in that country about community. Like there's sports, the Gaelic games, the hurling, all of that is based rugby. They have these community clubhouses, and the communities come together and support these athletes. And they don't just transfer based on what team's better. They play for the community they were born into. And being there and kind of learning more about that, I was like, gosh, that's what we're missing. And he talks about that in The Anxious Generation in that book. Because when you had communities, I think you had less of that. I think you had less of that feeling of being judged, and other people would parent your kids. I mean, right. I know when I was growing up, we'd get yelled at by the neighbor, they didn't care. And in the world we live in today, that has become such a frowned upon thing. Whereas I tell parents, hey, if my kid's doing something, I trust, if it's someone I trust and I know our values align, right? You gotta know you trust them and there are values in the same place. So it gets a little trickier because we've lost this community of raising people. So places like KOMA are great because you have a strong value system and it becomes this community of parents and people, and it does align. So the school, Bambini, that my kids went to, same thing. It's a community of people that are like-minded because we're sending our kids there and the values are the same. And that community for kids, I tell parents, because I still go back there and do consulting and do stuff with them, it's as much, the parent can grow and learn as much as their child if they're open to it. Mm-hmm. So, and in your culture, same thing. As a parent, I did the classes with my kids, and it's great because I thought, well, gosh, if I'm asking my child to do it, I should show up modeling behavior. And you hear this over and over, not just in parenting books, because I don't read that many parenting books. I read more business books or self-help books. But modeling the behavior, whether you're a business owner, you're running a school, or you're running a household, is the most important thing. Your kids listen to you, yes, some, but they're really watching what you do. Mm. Do you hold the door open for the person in front of you? Are you walking, if there's an elderly person with you, how are you treating them? And I know I watch how people treat other people. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I'm cognizant of that because I want my kids to know, go help with the groceries and things like that. You want them to intrinsically know to do that. we've just lost a lot of that.
So it's not do as I say, not as I do.
No. And that is how a lot of us were raised.
Yeah. But I think you touched on another very important principle, which is lead by example. I think that's the number one most important principle, not just for parenting, but for leading a team. And in reality, for leading anyone. Why not just do what you're telling other people to do? Like you'd think that's like a common sense thing.
Right.
But today it's not so much. And there's a lot of excuses. Or, I can say that, I can say this, but I can't do it because of excuse number 58, right? Whatever, right? But I think that is very much needed today. And that's what we're always trying to teach our upcoming leaders is lead by example. If you want somebody else to do it, then you should act like it, which let's go back into parenting, reacting.
Right.
So for us, when we're training our instructors, if a child shows an unwanted behavior, the last thing you want to do is react in a negative way.
Right.
And I always argue this. Children are so intuitive that they can feel when you get frustrated. Even if you just...
Oh, yeah.
Even if you're not even looking at them, they feel the body language.
100%.
So you have to train yourself to be so neutral, even when that
and it's hard
child's
sometimes.
Jumping around and misbehaving in class, picking his nose and running around and all this other stuff. But it's the most effective way in my many, many years of teaching is you got to stay calm and cool and calm.
100%. So whatever we focus on, I said attention matters. Whatever we focus on, we get more of. Yeah. So if you start focusing on the one child that's not behaving or doing the undesirable behavior, you're just going to get more kids. Kids seek attention. Kids want to be seen and they seek attention. And not knowing how their behavior is being managed at home, maybe that is reinforced at home. And in this environment, that's not acceptable. They'll catch up. They'll catch up the more they come here and they'll see that that's not working here. Yep. But the only way they're going to learn that, and then they're going to go home and still do it because they're getting attention for it, unless that changes at home. But 100%. When I taught in the 2 and 3-year-old class at Bambini, and I remember the kids would just be, you got 12, 2 or 3-year-olds. They're like running, sometimes they're running around and and then it escalates because one does it, the other follows. So if you start giving attention to the one or two, the whole thing falls apart. What I would do is just get really calm and I would literally sit down and my voice would get softer and I would find one kid that was the most still. And I'd be like, oh, I noticed Lauren is sitting crisscross applesauce. And then I would hand them invisible bunnies. I'm not kidding. I would just be like, here's a bunny when you're sitting safe. And I would just take my energy way down. And it helped me. I made it up, but it was just a tool that helped me figure that out. Mm-hmm. And it felt silly. And for a lot of people, like at home, that might not work. But there's all kinds of things you can do to bring your energy down. It's a good practice in general. Even in the work environment with your employees, you're not going to get a good result or be able to teach the child. The goal is to teach. The goal is to get change behavior and teach a better way to respond or react to a situation, like if they don't like something, like someone pushes them, whatever it might be. The goal is to get change behavior or new behavior and teach them something. Well, we can't teach them something. Well, what are we teaching them if we're yelling right back at them? Mm-hmm. Aggression begets aggression. So 100%.
I like what you said there, though. That's the same thing we do is don't try to have minimal attention on the unwanted behavior and put maximum attention on the correct behavior, and especially with praise. Yeah. Like you said, I mean, you're praising that person who is sitting correctly. And it's really simple like that. But it also goes into you and how you're presenting yourself, which that's why we record ourselves and then we review it.
Which is awesome.
Because then you got to hear how you're speaking. You have to see how you're presenting your body language. Because again, children are so intuitive. And if you're standing up, for example, in a very rigid position, but you're thinking you're relaxed, no, you're not. So we teach them, go on a knee, Put your two hands on your front knee and just relax and stay there. One of the things that I always kind of think about is with Starbucks. They train their employees, I don't know if they still do this, to think that their apron, that green apron, is like a shield.
Interesting.
And it's
I've not heard
a shield
that.
against these crazy people that go berserk because their latte wasn't perfect.
Oh
and
my
it,
gosh.
didn't have all the extra whatever they wanted, and they like get mad at them. So they're trained to think in their mind, this is my shield. They can't affect how I'm going to feel. I love that.
Smart.
Yeah.
That's actually very smart. So what I tell parents when they come to my classes or presentations is think of it this way, because this helped me. Think of it, if you're being reactive, you're giving your power to your child. So do you want to give your power to that little person that's driving,
right.
or even the adult, whatever, somebody cuts you off in traffic? And to be fair and to be honest, we never know truthfully why someone's doing that. 9 times out of 10, maybe they're just a horrible driver and they don't care and they're in a bad, but you know what I think to myself, and it's taken a lot of years to practice this mindset, but your mindset can change if you work on it and rewire those pathways, is I think, gosh, I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry for that person. They must be really miserable. They must be really, I think of it as a them problem, and I have empathy for them. And I think how unfortunate that that's how you live your life. And I also think to myself, I tell my kids, like, they'll be like, well, that, a person just cut you off. I think, well, we never know. Like, what if somebody in their family just died? What if they're racing to the hospital to get, like, one day my son ate peanuts. He has a peanut allergy. He was at football practice. And it was a matter of, do we call EMS or do you think I can get to school? Because he didn't have his EpiPen. And so, can I get to school and get him to Children's Mercy in time? And I was driving, my dad happened to be with me, and he's like, just drive. And I was careful, but I wasn't driving as sanely as I normally would. And, but again, so somebody might have judged my driving that day, but it was if they knew the whole story, they probably wouldn't. Mm-hmm. So it's just, we never know someone's full story. We never know someone's past. So just don't let that impact you. Don't give your power to it, because 1, we can't control it. And 2, if we do that, we're becoming powerless to the world around us. We're living in a reactive state to everything, and we're allowing the outside things to affect us. And that's just not a good way to live.
So get in the habit of giving people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Not because they deserve it, but because that's the most effective way of living a peaceful life for yourself.
It's better for you. It's positive
it's a
intent.
Selfish reason.
It's positive intent, but it's better for you. It benefits you. It's
right.
like, what is the benefit? Like, people that gossip, I can't stand it, because I'm like, I don't even have. If you really focus on you and live in the present moment, it takes a lot of energy. So yes. I don't even have the energy to think about other people's problems or whatever. Like, why? That doesn't benefit me. I don't like watching TV anymore.
Right.
Because I'm very intentional about what I allow in, because I see it has a direct effect on how I feel, the thoughts I have. So if it's not going to have a positive effect on me, then I don't want to expose myself to it. Like, what could I be doing that instead of watching this? I'm not saying I never watch a movie with my kids or something like that, but I gave it up for a year, and that was I highly recommend that for everyone. It's like, what else could I be doing in this time? Because I was using it at that time as kind of a checkout coping. And I was like, this isn't healthy. This isn't good. And after having given it up for a year, it's almost been hard for me to let it back in. And then I've tried watching a show or something. I'm like, gosh, shows are crazy now. And I was like, this is not adding value to my life. So unless my kids, for the most part, want to watch something with me, I laugh because I have like 7 TVs in my house. There's one that's never been turned on. It's just like, I've got to be intentional about what I allow in, because I am working really hard to have positive thoughts. Yeah. And I don't want that junk in my head. Even my social media. Your social media will say a lot about what you think about, or your kids' social media. If you scroll through their feeds, it's going to give you a good idea of what they're interested in and what they're looking at and what they're being fed. And mine is a lot of motivational, positive podcasts and speakers and inspiration, because that's what I want to look at. I don't want to see all the negatives. I mean, I know it's there. I'm not delusional about it, but I will deal with a problem when it's put in front of me, and I will focus on that problem. But worrying about things that I can't control or that haven't happened yet does not service me or anything about my life or what I'm trying to do.
Maybe we all need to start with putting our apron on before we start the day.
Yeah.
And protecting ourselves from all the unnecessary religious trash that comes in, whether it be TV, social media, gossiping. And people who gossip, by the way, the reason why they gossip is because they're so insecure.
Yes.
And they're doing that to try to take the attention off of them, so they don't have to think about themselves. Because when they start thinking about themselves, they get depressed and they don't feel good. So then they will focus on other people's problems. Hence, these people on like social media or YouTube and like the huge long comments that are so negative. I'm like, who sits down and writes that?
Right.
Like, who are you talking to?
Right.
Who are you trying to like talk to with this comment? And what are you trying to accomplish? Really, it's, again, focusing so much on others, but why not focus on the own splinter in your own eye instead of, or the log in your eye instead of the, the splinter in somebody else's.
So to your point, I think another mistakes parents can tend to make, I see this too, is they victimize their children. Because their kiddo will come home and say, well, so-and-so has said this to me or did this to me. And they just take this statement and run with it. And then they immediately call the school or call the teacher or call the other parent, assuming that's the whole story. So what I suggest parents do is instead of our kids are kids. They don't have all the tools. They don't have all the skills. That's their perspective. They're egocentric. And yes, they didn't like what the person said, but in that moment, they're not thinking about maybe what they did that might have caused that. So a great question to ask kids, or if you have the two kids there and you see something happen, oftentimes we're punishing the last thing, right? But hey, I noticed you said that was hurtful. Tell me what's going on. What happened before? Because kids don't typically just do something mean or walk up and hit somebody or push something. Usually it's been a back and forth that's gone on for a while. And oftentimes the kid that throws the last punch or does the thing may even be the kid that instigated it. So parents are not doing their child any favors. They're just teaching their children that they can be a victim to the world. And that might be actually a trigger for me. Like the victim mentality.
Yeah, that goes back to the fixed versus the growth mindset.
Yeah.
So the fixed mindset is essentially blaming every external thing for why you are who you are today.
Yep.
I was born like this, like you were talking about. I fully agree with you. Don't label your kids as extroverted or introverted, or he's just naturally social, or he's just naturally good at X, or whatever. First off, maybe there's something there, but what good does that do to label your child at an early age of this is who they are and this is who they're always going to be? But instead, we've got to train them to have the growth mindset that, hey, if you want something, then get after it. If you want to get better at speaking, then fix it. Go on YouTube, watch some videos, practice it, repetitions, get disciplined on it. If you are an insecure person, I'm always going to be insecure. I'm always going to be shy. No, you're not.
It's limiting beliefs.
Limiting
beliefs are so harmful. And it's, as much as I know, I'm not immune to making a statement or doing something like that. And I'm like, oh man, I said that. So I'll say something sometimes or word it in a way and then correct myself. I correct the statement. Like I might say, I used to think I'm not book smart. So my son's dyslexic. We found out when he was 9. He does great. He doesn't, because of the environment he was educated in, he never saw it as school systems are set up to those kids sometimes get singled out or like, oh, they're going to that class. Yeah. It becomes this negative thing, right? Whereas in his case, it was never that way. So he's never cared. He doesn't care if you talk. It's just not a thing. But we never made it a thing. But him going through that process, I'm like, I think I was dyslexic because I used to say, oh, I'm not book smart. I'm not book smart. I found audiobooks. I've read hundreds of books. And it's just, I need to get the information in a different way. It doesn't make me not book smart. And I also care more about my kids' EQ than IQ. I want them to be able to think and problem solve. I don't care if they know I mean, I'm not saying if they have to do a career that needs to know geometry, great. But I don't parents sometimes, again, put too much pressure on kids with their grades. I have never asked my kids what their grades are. What I ask my kids is, I tell my kids, I don't care about your grades. I care about your effort.
Bingo.
Did you do your best?
Yes.
And if they come home with a poor grade, it's funny. They'll tell me. They're like, I failed it. I'm like, well, wait, did you really fail it? Like, what does that mean? Again, more questions. Did you do everything you could do? Or did you procrastinate? Did you wait too long to study? I will hold them accountable to the behavior. I will not hold them accountable to the result if they did put their best foot forward. Not every person in a business organization can do every job. In your business right here, you have people that specialize in different things for a reason. Mm-hmm. In my business, I'm not like, I don't want to do the bookkeeping. I'm going to pay a CPA to do that, right? Because that is not my jam. But there are people that they specialize in different things. We just need to be resourceful and have the emotional intelligence to know where that's maybe not something I want to put my attention and efforts towards because I need to be over here. So I'm going to find somebody that's going to do that for me. So I don't expect my kid to excel in everything at school because they might not be great at everything. And I just don't think that high pressure, again, it's extrinsic motivation, not intrinsic.
And in reality, when we force kids to only focus on the grades, then they stop focusing on actually absorbing what they're really learning.
Right.
So I know for me, I don't remember hardly anything from school.
No.
I mean, it's just, pull all-nighters, which...
To memorize it and forget it.
In college, memorize it, get shingles, by the way, because I had 2 all-nighters, and then I ended up getting shingles at like 19 years old, like an idiot. But to pass the final, you think I remember anything? Any of that? No.
There's so much rote memory. It's just crazy. So I have like in schools, I mean, we need to change the way we're educating kids. So the kids' school that they went to through 5th grade, it's transdisciplinary learning. So if they're studying the human body, they would study the math concepts that made sense with that. They would study when they went to art, language, whatever it was all tied to the human body. So they were connected to the project. They were immersed in the project. And it was more about the human body, not math, but because it was so interesting and exciting. And it was a lot of collaborative learning, which in traditional environments are like, don't talk to each other, do your own work. I'm sorry, when you get hired and go in a business, you have to work and collaborate with people. And kids are getting into the workforce and they don't know how to collaborate and work with people. And in that environment, that school environment, I'm blessed. And as a teacher in that environment, what we would do is if a child, I'm talking a 2-year-old that couldn't do tape. Well, we would teach them at that young of an age. We didn't do it for them. Okay, well, who do you know that might have that skill? We would teach them to be resourceful, to go find the other kid in the classroom that had the skill for whatever it was. If they couldn't write their name, parents want to come in and write their child's name when they sign in the morning. Well, if a parent writes the child's name, the child immediately shuts down because the parent's signature compared to the 2 or 3-year-old signature is too far apart. They're out of the zone of proximity of learning. Whereas if they get a peer to help them, it seems more achievable or attainable. And what it does is it reinforces the confidence of the child helping the younger child. They become more confident because the mastery of learning is teaching.
Yep. And
the younger child becomes confident in advocating for the need. And then eventually in that school environment, the younger child becomes the older child. And now that behavior's been modeled and now they're helping. So it's just so interesting. I tell you, teaching little kids has taught me so much about human behavior.
Oh my goodness. Yes, it does.
All in all.
Yeah. And you, by the way, you just described the entire structure of KOMA.
Right. Because your students become teachers.
Yes. We have an entire mentorship program where at 10 years old, they're learning how to become a leader and actually a paid employee, a paid instructor here when they're 14. So for example, my daughter, when she was 10, she entered it, but then shortly after, she led a class of 3 super tykes, which are 3 4-year-olds, by herself for 40 minutes.
Awesome.
And as a teacher, teaching that age group is not easy. It's very difficult because not only the behavior, but you have to keep them on their toes the whole time, and you have to know what you're doing next.
Yeah.
And if you start running out of things to do next, then that starts to become a very bad situation. I want to touch back on this emotional intelligence topic which essentially means being able to see through the perspective of others. And that's important, not only as an employee, but even in business, because business is nothing until something's sold. It's not a business until something is sold. Well, how do you get things to be sold? Well, you have to think through the perspective of the customer. And then lastly, this is something I want people to think about, and I hope it doesn't come across as offensive, but I think the number one priority is to help the child get over themselves.
Yeah.
The number one obstacle for all of us is pride. Because when we are introverted, quote unquote, or when we start thinking about or caring about what other people think, that actually, in my opinion, is rooted in pride and narcissism. Because who are you? Why do you think they care about you? Well, you're assuming the person across the table actually cares about like what you're doing.
I heard this said once. No one thinks about us as much as we think about ourselves.
That's right.
I mean, and I use this analogy, like, because have you ever gotten dressed and headed to an event? Maybe you were at the event the week before. I know as a female, I've done this, and I'm like, oh gosh, did I wear this last week? Just coincidentally, and then I think to myself, do I remember what anyone else was wearing? No, it doesn't matter. No. And that's a stupid analogy, but it's one that I literally think about because it's so representative of what you just said. Nobody thinks about you as much as you think about you. We are very egocentric by nature. And yes, it is hard. That's why I think it's so difficult for people to see out through the lens of someone else. But they're not thinking about you because they're thinking about themselves. Because we always think about ourselves first. Right. Well, it's just like when I post stuff on, so when, I post for what I do. I post a lot of things and reels and stuff on social media. So one of the other things, which is the business version of what I do, is better, not perfect. It's like I used to overanalyze and want everything to be just and I'm like, I don't have time for that. Like, I just got to get content. And you know what? People don't want to see perfect either. Some of the videos that I get the most likes or most follows on, I'm like, wow, that do not look awesome, or it was not good, in my opinion, based on the perfect way I want to see it. But it's the one that people relate to and it resonates with. So even when I'm speaking, I don't say anything ever the same way twice. I'm not that. I was doing something with a local church and we were pre-recording some videos before a live event. And the pastor texted me the night before and he was like, do you have your scripts for the prompter? And I was like, what? And it didn't matter. He didn't use them either, but I think a lot of people do. And I was like, yeah, it's in my head. Like, I don't have a script. We're just going to roll with it. Because for me, when I get in front of a group of parents or a group of people, the message is going to look different based on who's sitting in that audience. And I have to get a pulse on like, what are the age of their kids? What are their struggles? Like, I want it to be relatable to them and authentic. And that can't be scripted. Do I have certain concepts I talk about? Yes, just like we're talking right now. But I want it to be, the authenticity piece is really important to me. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've probably heard the news about essentially we have a shrinking population, especially in the non-third world countries.
Right.
Japan is shrinking, America. I mean, nobody wants to have kids anymore. And I'm being overboard on saying that, but it's definitely one of those things where less people want to have kids. And the reason that I always hear over and over again is it's too hard. It's going to be too hard, whether it be financially, et cetera, right? Recently, I've come to a realization for myself. If I'm not succeeding in the areas that I'm not succeeding in, right? If I'm not succeeding, I've come to realize the stakes aren't high enough.
Right.
When the stakes are high enough, guess what happens? You'd start digging deeper.
Yeah.
And you start making it happen. But when they're not high enough, you're like,
you get complacent.
Yes. And it's just like, it's okay if I don't succeed. And I'll make this statement. When you have a child, the stakes become so high, not only for them, but for yourself. And I'll explain really quickly here. If you want your child to become the best version of themselves or who God created them to be. You want them to have all those habits you wish you had when you were younger. You want them to be physically healthy, mentally healthy, spiritually healthy. You want to have that faith. Well, what's the first step? You do it.
Modeling it.
You want for example, you want your child to be physically healthy? Are you? Are you overweight?
Right.
Are you healthy? Are you metabolically healthy? Are you eating the things that you are telling your children not to eat? Right? If you're doing that, then dig down inside and realize the stakes are extremely high, because it's almost like this. Your child could grow up to have, for example, type 2 diabetes.
Right.
Because of their habits.
Right.
That is something you bring on yourself. That's
Right.
not something you're born with. Type 1, you're born with that, or there's something else
Right.
going on. Type 2, you actually bring that on yourself. So then you have a choice. You can either sacrifice now and stop eating the garbage, stop eating the added sugar yourself, so then you can model for your child now, or your child can have type 2 diabetes later. The stakes are pretty high in my opinion now. And when you start looking at it like that, you're like, okay, I gotta shape it up.
It's so funny. So I've always loved working out. I mean, ever since, I've cardio athlete. Then when Harper was about 6 months old, I started lifting, but I'm constantly changing based on age, based on like what my body is capable of. But just recently, I felt stagnant, just what you were saying on that part of my life. And I was like, gosh, I need a new goal. I need something that's going to push me. And so I found a competition and I'm like, okay, I want to train for that. So I found a gym that trains you for that. And then I said to my daughter, I said, do you want to do it with me? It turns out she's not old enough yet, but she wants to do it with me. And I was so excited that and I'm like, okay, so when you're 16, we'll do it together. What I'll do is I'll do one so I understand it better. And then when you're 16, you can do it with me. So yes, to your point, we've got to model the behaviors we want. Because if I'm sitting on my phone and not paying attention to my kids, but I'm telling them they're on their phone too much, they don't respect me. If you're an owner of a business and you're telling all of your employees to do the thing you're not willing to do, they're not going to respect you. So there has to be a level of respect, for sure. Yeah. So 100%.
You and your son and daughter were students here.
Yes.
Yeah, back in the day.
That's why we're still, because we very much align on our beliefs. That's why we stayed so long. We were here, we were here 8 years, 9. We were here a long time.
I did not realize that.
Yeah,
Wow.
I want to say we were here because Max was 2 or 3 when we started.
Why did you start with him?
Well, because he was very rambunctious. It was around the same time we found the school.
Yeah.
So I just felt like he needed activity, and I liked the discipline of it. And I loved how you pushed, it's in the kindest way possible, pushed him outside his comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And especially with my daughter, same thing. She didn't want to come and do it, but your kids, would I keep pushing them to do something they didn't want to do over a long period of time? Maybe not. But I think in some instances, it's really good to push your kids. Too often people sign their kids up for a sport. It's hard. They're challenged and then they let them quit. I don't agree with that.
Mid-season.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. No. My daughter, I signed her up for basketball. She told me not to. She didn't want to, but I signed her up anyway. She wouldn't talk to me for a week. She was 10 years old at the time. It's her favorite sport.
Yeah.
And I remind her of that. Remember, because she didn't want to do it. She didn't know the kids she was doing it with. And the reason I did it, we have more information because we're adults and we've lived longer and we understand the world better than our kids because they've been on the planet a lot less time. She was 10. She was going to a new school. She didn't know all the girls very well. And I wanted to put her on the basketball team with the kids she was going to be in school with the next year. She still plays basketball with those girls and she's going to play in high school. Or she wants to play in high school, and it's her favorite sport.
So you made the executive decision as the adult, mm-hmm. the fully developed brain who can see beyond today, right? And then you made an executive decision, and then now she's thanking you for it.
Yeah.
Which essentially is my entire life on what my father, the decisions he made for me.
Right. And I love that. Like, even when the kids have to get up and read their letter, when they get their black belt here, I just love that. It's so amazing to see your kid do something that maybe makes them nervous, that is hard for them. It's outside of their comfort zone, but they do it. And to see how good they feel after doing it.
Why'd you guys stay for so long?
because we love the culture. Well, because I did. I love the culture. I love the discipline. I started doing it with them.
Yep.
And yeah, it was, and I feel like we're very like-minded in our beliefs on parenting and raising kids. And I feel like you have a very strong value, foundation and value base here. And yeah, just a complete alignment. Like I have to do things that align with, that's why we went to the school we went to. That's why my kids went here. It's funny because I still talk about my kids' experience here almost at least once in every presentation, because it's about sticking with something that's hard. So when you're trying to parent in a different way, this is when I talk about you in my presentations. When you're trying to parent in a different way, it's going to feel uncomfortable the first time. You're probably going to do it wrong. You're going to feel like you're failing, but it takes repetition. Just like if I come to Taekwondo, my kids did Taekwondo. This is what I say. My kids did Taekwondo for years. I did it with them. The first time you go, it's awkward. It's uncomfortable, especially when back in the day, there weren't as many adults doing it. You know, sometimes I'd be the only adult testing with all the kids. It was awkward. But I thought, gosh, if I'm going to have the expectations for my kids to be awkward, forget about it. I don't care what these people think. I'm doing it. They're not. And I have to look at it that way. I'm doing it and I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. And that is I would rather be uncomfortable in that way than sit. I don't think I've ever regretted doing anything that made me feel uncomfortable.
Ditto. So when you said you felt awkward, why?
Because I was the only adult standing up there testing with kids.
But why does that matter?
Because you're thinking about, you look funny in front of these other adults.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah.
It goes back to the other people.
100%.
But we're gonna now live life not caring about what these strangers think about us. And we go after the things we want in life and not allow other people to be in the way of that.
100%. And yeah, now it's been a minute too, because gosh, it's been like 5 to 6 years since we've been here. And I guess about 6 years when I think about when Max got his black belt. But yeah, it's, wow. I never regretted. If anything, I just at some point want to come back and finish and get our black belts. I'd have to relearn everything.
We're always here.
I know.
We got a lot of moms in class now.
I love it.
It's a good time to start. But no, you hit it on the head again. I mean, I just have to urge people to just dig deep and really think about this. If there's things that you want in life and you're trying to accomplish big things, and what's stopping you is caring what other people think, right? If that's the reason, we got to get over that as fast as possible. And it starts with getting over ourselves. Because if you feel awkward, it's only because you have a high perception of yourself, right? Because you're comparing it to what you think you are. But if you're like forgive me for saying this word, but peasant, like if you feel like you're a peasant, then everybody looks at me like a peasant. Like, right. What does it matter?
You have to almost show up as the person you want to be before you actually are like that person.
Right.
You have to, and all I can say is the only way to get comfortable being uncomfortable is to do it over and over. You got to take action.
Yes.
So it's messy action. It's
messy action.
And
like that.
Again, the not give up better for perfect. Yep. It's like you can't give up being a little bit better for fear of you're not going to get it perfect the first 10 times. So the new place I joined, I'll give you another example. I show up at this gym and I laugh because I go, how many people come back again? And they're like, not very many, because it's an insane workout. Well, they started jump roping. I maybe jumped rope the last time when I was 10, and I felt uncomfortable, but and then I get out of my head. I'm like, who cares? Nobody cares here whether I can jump rope. I did order a jump rope on Amazon. I'm going to practice at home. So I can control that. But if I quit, I'm weak. If I quit, I'm letting myself down. I'm letting what other people think get in the way of what my goals.
Because you have accountability from inside.
Yeah.
This is the key here is getting our kids to go from looking at us for approval, which they need that in the beginning. Before their brain fully develops, they need that. But how quickly can we get them to hold themselves accountable? Like even for me, walking in today to the office, I mean, we always have little bits of trash that gets from the lawnmower, right? The lawnmower just spits out trash all the time. And I've challenged myself every time I see a piece of trash, which is usually disgusting to pick up.
Right.
How can I walk by it, see it, and then not pick it up? Now I'm holding myself accountable, even it's such a small thing. But guess what? That bleeds into every other facet of your life. You're trying to lose weight. You think now all of a sudden you can turn it on? Mm-mm. No, you got to hold yourself accountable for everything that you challenge yourself
and
with.
We're the biggest rationalizers as humans. We can talk ourselves out of anything.
Oh, I'm in a hurry. I don't have 5 seconds to pick up the trash, or I can't get my hands dirty because I'm going to go shake somebody's hand.
Yeah, 100. And like the working out piece, if people say they don't have time for it, I'm like, you have to make time. You have to schedule it. Right. It has to be a priority. So is it a priority to you? And it's just because people will say, well, you're just so good at that. And I'm like, well, no, I'm not. I just have made it a habit. It's actually part of my identity. And when I feel like it's not going the way I want it to go, I give myself a new goal. I give myself a new challenge. I focus on something different. I change up what I'm doing so it's not stagnant. And so I'm still interested and I'm still motivated. Because the key, I'm not motivated to get up at 4 a.m. and go work out, because I usually go, I went at 6 this morning. I don't go to bed early enough sometimes. I don't love getting up. Do you know what gets me out of bed? Is thinking about the feeling of being done with the workout. I'm not thinking about the workout. I'm not dreading the workout. I'm thinking of how much better my day is, how I feel. I eat healthier because I've worked so hard on my body. I'm up, I have chores done. My day just flows better. Mm-hmm. So that is the thought and the feeling, and I've done it enough that gets me out of bed.
One of the things that I've always tried to train myself on is this idea that your emotions are irrelevant. Mm-hmm. For example, I hate working out. Like, think about, this is what I do for a living. I hate it. It doesn't get any better.
No.
But then instead of me trying to like it more, I'm trying to train myself to think it's irrelevant how I feel about it.
Right.
Because it's the goal. How you feel should not matter. Oh, I don't want to do that. Who cares? You got to do it. Oh, I don't want to, take my daughter out for a one-on-one because I got work to do. Really? Who cares what you feel like doing? Mm-hmm. You just got to do what you got to do. Get the feelings out and just focus on getting it done.
And I think about sometimes just sitting quietly in the morning. Like, I think I don't have time for that. I struggle with just sitting still. But when I do that, I'm much more intentional with what I do in my day. I feel less stressed. We live in a world where kids are so stressed. There's all the depression. There's a lot of suicide. And I just feel like it's it's frustrating to me because it's simple. I'm not saying it's a simple fix, but I'm saying there are simple mindset things that we could be doing that would really improve, I think, people's overall mental well-being. We just get so stressed out by the dumbest stuff, or get focused on the wrong stuff, or we tend to focus on, I know I was guilty of this. I used to focus on everything I didn't get done in the day. And I would be hard on myself about that, or frustrated about myself. Instead, I'm like, well, I got this done. That was good. And usually every day I wake up, because I know some people time block, and I'm always experimenting with different ways of staying focused. But I think, what's the one thing, the book you told me to read, I read it after we met last time. Great book. But I think about, what's the one thing I actually have to get done today? And I get that done. And then I'm like, okay, I got that done. And what's the one thing I need to focus on, the next day? Yes. And it's been so helpful in that regard. And again, I'm modeling those things for my kids. When my kids say, well, I can't do that, or make the excuses, I'm like, wait a second, who's in charge of that?
Yeah.
I hear you, but who's in charge of that? You're in charge of that. You can do whatever you want. And that's also a motivator for me with what I'm doing. I want my kids to see that if you don't quit, it's ugly sometimes. It's not pretty.
That's all that matters. Success. There's nothing else that matters most than not quitting.
Right.
There's nothing else. Resilience is all
you can't fail if you don't quit.
That's step one. Don't quit, right?
And we've lost resilience. Kids are no longer resilient because their parents and again, I'm not shaming the parents. They don't realize what they're doing. They're just uninformed and they don't know. And again, they're overwhelmed. Right. But it's just, don't let them quit. The more we let our kids get uncomfortable under our roofs when we're there to support them and coach them. And I say coach them, not tell them, just to your point. Don't stop telling, start asking.
Yep.
We're there to coach and support them. They're going to have more grit. They're going to have that resilience that they need to survive in the world, so they don't go get their first job and get fired and break down and think the world's ending. The kids need more resilience, and the only way they're going to get the resilience is opportunities for failure.
And bring them to KOMA.
Yes, yeah. And bring them to KOMA. No, KOMA, and I would say it was great for my kids. I mean, just seeing my son's face after he got it. I mean, how accomplished he felt, and he was young. He was young. So
yeah. So main takeaways for me first is lead by example as a parent. You got to model who you want your child to become, and if you need motivation, you got this precious, precious blessing from God right in front of you. Yep. I mean, there's nothing. You got many blessings, but this is top three, if not top one, right? This is such an amazing blessing. So that's your motivation, right? Number two would be build a relationship.
Yeah.
I'm not saying be a dictator. I'm not saying be, David Goggins out there running around cussing at people, and then that's how he's leading his kid. No. It's, hey, I'm doing this. Let's do this together.
It's connection.
And I always say, meet them where they are. Don't try to pull them to a different level where they aren't. They're not there yet.
Right.
Meet them where they are, and remember, progress is all we're focusing on, even if it's centimeter by centimeter. But we're not going backwards, and we're not staying still.
Right.
We just got to keep moving forward and forward. Last thing I'll mention is you talk about there's no manual. I'd go back a little bit on that. There is a manual. It's called the Bible.
Yeah.
The Bible will tell you how to parent your kids, and if you really want a model of who we should all be modeling, that's Jesus.
Yep.
Christ was the model. I mean, he washed feet. Talking about getting over yourself.
Right.
Right? Dying to self. That's what we all should be focusing on.
Well, and the Bible will even say God wants connection over compliance.
Yes. Yeah. So, anyways, if there is a parent who is on the fence, right? They got young kids checking out our website. They heard this podcast and they're on the fence. What would you say to them?
It's on the fence as far as changing their parenting style?
No, come and try out KOMA.
KOMA? Oh, okay. Yeah. So I would say bring them. It's funny because I'm like, bring your kids. Your kids need to be pushed, and you do it in a very loving way here. And it's because you care and you're authentic. You're not showing up here. You're not saying one thing and doing another. Your mission and everything's in alignment. Because I feel like in life, like with what I'm doing, if things feel off, it's usually because I'm like head a direction that's slightly out of alignment with my goal. So I highly recommend it because it's going to help you as a parent. And I would even say try it with your kid.
Yeah.
Do it with your kid. It was a great experience for me and my kids, and especially my youngest. Yeah, we'll get her back here.
We're always here. So you are doing speaking engagements. You have a podcast. Where can they find more info about you?
So on my website, so it's just cncbykori.com. So,
and we'll put the link in the description too.
And then, and the podcast can be found through the website. So it's super easy. And if anyone has questions, there's email there too.
Thank you so much for coming on. This is an absolute pleasure.
Thanks. Always a pleasure.